Dan and Amy, and this is a segment I like to call, hey, remember there are Illinois elections, too, on November 8th. You live here. Many in our listening audience live here. I know we're in Indiana and Wisconsin and Iowa and all that, but many, many listeners live in Illinois. The ones that have decided to stay, so many have left. Illinois continues to lead the nation in out-migration year over year, stiff competition from New Jersey, but we've bested them. And the question is why, how many, and what's the impact? Because to hear the Madigan people talk about it and the Democrats talk about it, hey, what are you talking about? You know, look, I see downtown, it's vibrant. I see people walking down Michigan Avenue going both directions. Nobody's leaving. Yeah. Nothing to see here. And then to the extent people are leaving, we don't know why. And we don't know where they're going. These are all mysteries to the Chicago Democrats in charge of this state, what's happening in Illinois. It's not happening. We don't know why it's happening, and we're working on it. Try and reconcile all of those contradictory statements. But that's essentially what you get from the Madigan spokesman Steve Brown and Democrat state legislators. Oh, by the way, including... for all you folks in the suburbs, including your pretend independent Democrat state legislators in suburban Cook and the Collar counties, who you don't think have anything to do with Mike Madigan and John Cullerton and the Chicago Democrat power structure. Aren't you cute? Wake up. For more on what is actually happening, by the numbers, very interesting study that's been done by the Granite Institute and in conjunction with the Illinois Policy Institute, about out-migration. And to distill that for us, we're joined by Scott Moody, who's the CEO of the Granite Institute and a senior fellow at the Illinois Policy Institute. Scott, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thank you.
So you've looked at out-migration in Illinois over about a 2-decade period. And what is it you find in terms of who's leaving and where they're going?
That's right. The study draws on data from the Internal Revenue Service, which has actually become the gold standard for looking at migration because it's hard data based on people's tax returns. And it also gives us a wealth of information about where people are going and their characteristics. And what we've found over the last 2 decades is that Illinois has suffered net out-migration every single year between 1995 and 2013, representing 500,000 tax-paying households with over 1 million people within those households. But more importantly, the income associated with those people, nearly $50 billion, have left the state never to return. And in breaking news yesterday, we found out the 2014 data came out, and out-migration of income is at still at elevated levels with $3.4 billion leaving the state. And I dug a little bit deeper. Half of that loss came from Cook County. And that's not surprising given the financial condition of the city of Chicago, and moving to Indiana or Wisconsin would be just a weekend endeavor to move to another state.
And so that the 500,000 taxpaying households that are gone, the million-plus people who have left, representing $50 billion in essentially gross domestic product for the state of Illinois, that would have thrown off how much in terms of tax revenue and in the context of a state with $10 billion in unpaid bills and $230 billion in debt and those sorts of numbers?
Well, that's a key point. Government policy is important for driving these folks out, and it's also hurting government coffers. And what we've calculated is that state and local governments in Illinois could have collected an additional $8 billion per year in taxes. And if you compound that over the entire length of the study, that would have been an extra $74 billion in state and local tax revenue. It would have gone a long ways to closing the budget deficit.
Wow.
Now, is it the possibility that we have a death tax here? That's why many people who are the retiring age want to leave Illinois?
Well, that's right. When you look at the states that Illinois residents are fleeing to, Florida, Indiana, Texas, Wisconsin, and Arizona, 2 of those states, Florida and Texas, don't have an income tax, and they don't have an estate tax. And that we showed that that's a very powerful reason for why people are leaving the state.
Yeah, but it's interesting because if you look down into the numbers of this study, the groups that are leaving with the most frequency, millennials number 1, 35 to 54-year-olds number 2. So these are those individuals just getting into the workforce and those individuals that are in their prime earning years. It's not retirees, disproportionately. It's younger working folks.
That's right. At the end of the day, well, a lot of folks like to talk about the retirees and the wealth that they're taking with them, and that's important. At the end of the day, the vast majority of these folks leaving are people looking either for their first job or to move up the economic ladder with a new job. And unfortunately, Illinois is not creating them. It's states like Florida and Texas, which have created the vast majority of new jobs since the end of the Great Recession. So that's where people are going to flock to. But in recent years, Illinois needs to be even more worried because Wisconsin and Indiana had just enacted right-to-work laws. And they're going to become job-creating dynamos here in the future, and that's going to suck more people out of the state.
Well, and the interesting data point associated with this in terms of categorization by age is the average income, your study finds, the average income of out-migrants, people leaving Illinois, in 2015 was $66,745. So those are decidedly middle-income people. This idea, it's just the wealthy who want to shelter their income by spending 181 days at their summer or winter place in Florida or Arizona or Texas or wherever. That's not what's happening. What's happening is people that are workaday people trying to build wealth and, as you say, advance their careers that are, paying their freight right now. They're leaving. It's the aspirational family that's leaving.
That's right. And more troubling in the long run is because these young people aren't staying in the state, they're not going to have children in the state. And already Illinois' population is stagnating. And you don't want to end up like a state like Maine, where the demographic situation has gotten so bad because people have been leaving the state for decades, that the labor force now is actually shrinking. Most Americans have no idea that labor force shrinking basically feels like a slow-moving economic depression in many areas of Maine. You don't want that coming to Illinois.
And it's interesting, too, the study finds the top states to which people from Illinois are moving: Florida, Indiana, Texas, Wisconsin, Arizona. So for those that argue, of course, it's the brutal winters in Chicago. That's what's driving people out. Well, the winters are pretty similar in Indiana and Wisconsin. So there's something else afoot than just the weather.
That's right. And that's the key part of this is by examining the characteristics of where people are moving to. We know that it is more than just the weather. We looked at various factors. Greater job growth in private sector jobs was very important. Taxes are lower, especially estate taxes. Even debt burden were lower in states that people were moving to. So people do understand the broader policy environment that's being created in their state, whether it's just because they can't find a job or they can't make a living in the state, and they're going to vote with their feet correspondingly.
All right. He's Scott Moody, CEO of the Granite Institute and a senior fellow at the Illinois Policy Institute, to which I'm also affiliated. Fascinating report, Scott. Thanks so much for elucidating it for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Let's take a call right quick here. How about Ralph in Rantoul? You're on Chicago's Morning Answer.
Yeah, good morning. We saw this trend in the bunker a few years ago. So what we did is we started a ranch over here just in Indiana to help Illinois fleers acclimate to freedom, lower corruption of government. We started things where they could start to repopulate the state. We call them houses, and they're lower cost. As long as you stay away from Lake County in Indiana, which has a corruption index almost as high as Chicago. There's been Chicago creep of government corruption into Lake County for decades now. But, they wander around. We've opened a little kind of like a petting zoo to help people meet other fleers where they can meet them and not be stabbed or shot, especially if they're coming from parts of Chicago, which are more crime afflicted with crime. But it's a big hit, especially the repopulation centers known as lower cost houses.
Yeah, thanks for resettling those Illinois refugees, Ralph. It's you're doing well by doing good. Thank you so much, Ralph. Marianne in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Oh, I love Sioux Falls.
Hello.
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 Hi. We moved 3 months ago from Illinois to Sioux Falls, South Dakota because of all the reasons you listed. We're afraid to the state's going to implode because of all the debt, and the taxes are way, way lower. I'm not sure how the winters are going to be yet. I'm told they're similar, but I doubt it. But we didn't care. We needed to get out, and we think we got out in time.
All right, Marianne, we're sending you a bill for $8 billion that you took with you. Thanks for the call.
Oh, no, that's not our share. No, we're done. That's all yours now.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne.